When kids just won't listen, parents often feel stuck with two choices: to give in or get angry. It's exhausting. We give you the top techniques directly from the experts, helping you on your path to a more peaceful, respectful, and joyful life with your kids. Shiela Martina Keaise, spelled Keaise, promises me that her last name is pronounced that way, Keaise. But then again, I never know when she's messing with me. Shiela is a children's librarian at the Colleton County Memorial Library, and she's the first person I have interviewed who is working in a publicly funded environment. My other guests who are sometimes the bosses or employees in private organizations, they have the luxury of being able to say to a child, hey, you're not invited back here if something gets out of hand. And it is not the same for people working in public environments. So I'm always looking out for distinctions, because there really is a big difference between, a summer camp or even a babysitter and a public institution, or a parent who ostensibly can't say to a child, hey, we're done, don't come back tomorrow, I don't want to work with you anymore. So it's always fascinating to see what they do differently, if anything, to get their kids to listen. Shiela is also the host of a local TV show called Miss Sheila's World of Reading. She is the author of something like 10 children's books, all of which are illustrated by local kids. She is a book publisher working with other authors. She has a wonderful YouTube channel with a lot of content, and I will post all of the links to all of these things. You'll find out soon that Shiela has quite an energetic, sometimes boisterous personality, and I think the fact that she can keep a job at a library is a real testament to just how great she is at her job working with kids. It's easy to think, oh, that's why the kids love her, because of her zany antics. But the good news for those of us who are naturally more reserved is that during this interview, I think we uncover that there is a method to her madness. So here we go. Okay, I've got Miss Shiela Keaise with me here, and we are ready. So what is the main thing, if there is one, and I'm sure you have a lot of things, but what would you say is kind of the main thing that you've learned in all of your work with children?
The very main thing, James, that I learned working with children is that children want to be loved. They want to be validated. And I am so glad that I get the opportunity to do that with them. Validate them, show them that love.
So what's it look like, your space at the library? Is it a lot of foot traffic? Are they coming in with families?
Well, we get a lot of families coming, and what I love seeing is when dad comes with moms and they make it a family event. And it's so encouraging to see that, because children need to see that their parents love books or reading and or education. So mostly it's families, and they bring their little ones in. They let them select books, as well as they are actually selecting books for them. And it's usually kind of fun just to greet them as they come in and see what they are looking for. So it's just fun.
Now, I hadn't heard of Walterboro in all my time in Charleston until moving a little closer out here. What is Walterboro like? What are the people of Walterboro like? And how does your space compare to a library in the city, a big city, or maybe just downtown?
Well, James, Walterboro is very family-oriented. We are close-knit, And you know what they say about small towns? Everybody knows everybody. And that's true about Walterboro. Walterborians are all over the place. I mean, well, we know each other. And so if you hear something going on, then more than likely you either know of their family or know of their friend, and it links back to someone that you know. So I think it's awesome that being in a small town, we get a chance to see families and friends come together as one. It's not as exciting as city life because we don't have a whole lot of things to offer, but we have the library, and the library has cool events, and we offer things for families, for children, for teens, for adults, and we make it welcoming so that every and anyone can come in and make it their own, because the library is for the general public.
Yeah, I've been to some really large libraries, and it looks like you see kids, sometimes teens, just showing up in droves. And I've seen librarians who are a little uncomfortable sometimes because they don't know all of these people necessarily, and they don't know their families. And sometimes I've seen it become kind of a wild area. Have you found that knowing people and knowing their families has an effect on your ability to work with the kids?
Great question, James. Definitely so. By me knowing the parents say, well, you better not play with Miss Shiela, or they'll say, Miss Shiela gonna check you. So that plays a big part in disciplining and even in working with children, because I am familiar with the parents, and believe it or not, James, I've been doing this for 20-something years. We're not going to go to the numbers exactly, but long enough to have seen parents and their children come through, and to see the next generation is just awesome. And they know how I am or what I did and how I treated them, and they know that their children are going to get that same treatment. And that's what I love about it, because thankfully I haven't changed. And so it's fun just to see the next generation and to get to know them. And I think it plays a great part in being effective.
I've seen some times where you've had story time where you're reading to the kids, and there's a little bit of talking amongst themselves or interrupting. How do you handle that when you have a group of kids and maybe just a couple of them are talking during one of your story times?
Oh, great question. So story time is very important, James. And I make sure that children are very quiet during this session, because if you're talking and your neighbor is not talking, then they're going to miss something because you're talking. So I like to say, okay, I hear talking, and someone's not going to be able to hear if you're talking. Now, that's my first initial reaction. However, if you are persistently talking, what I'm going to do is say, okay, James, I hear you talking, and I don't know if you're hearing my story. So do you want to hear my story, or do you want to sit with your teacher? And so I give them an out. Either they can behave correctly, or they can and stay in their place. They can behave correctly and stay in their place, or they can continue their behavior but go sit with their teacher. Either way, it takes them out of the situation or gets them quiet. Okay? So if you are persistent in being talkative or not listening and disturbing your neighbor, then what I'm going to do is give you an opportunity to either get quiet, and I'll say it just like this. Okay, James, I hear you have that gift of gab today. So since you're talking, I think I wanted you to help me with the story. And sometimes I even let them be a part of the story. And you know what? A lot of times that actually works. We give them a chance to be a part of the story, to either go with their teacher or to sit quietly. And when I see that child is just a busy child and needs something extra to do, what I do is put them in the story. And believe it or not, James, this actually calms them down. And that child that has been very talkative and disruptive in story time usually be my best storytime child at the end of the year with them visiting regularly. So I'm excited because I get a chance to work with even those talkative children, those children that are very busy and are disruptive in their behavior. We handle them the same way. We give them a chance to be a part of the story. And then I said, and another way I handle it, another thing that I do to cause children to calm down and to settle and listen to the story, I'll say, James, do you need a hug? I think James needs a hug. And then the other boys and girls say, oh, and what happens is this child is not embarrassed to the point where they don't want to hug, but they're embarrassed to the point where I think I do want to hug, and then I'm going to sit quietly. And so they come up, and I say, come on, let's get a hug. Some of them, not all of them, James, but some of them. They'll come up, and I'll give them a hug. I said, now, are you going to sit quietly for me? And they will sit quietly. And I usually don't have much trouble after that.
To play devil's advocate, have you ever found that loving approach of giving a hug or inviting a disruptive kid into the story, to the front and center of everyone's attention, have you ever found that has made it even worse? And now it's a competition to who can get Miss Sheila's attention, and if so, how do you deal with that?
Actually, that actually happened, and more than one occasion. So what I did was, if I disciplined James, and I said, James, all right, since you are not wanting to listen, you're going to come and help me tell the story. So after I disciplined James by subtly inviting him to help me with the story, like you said, someone else is going to say, well, I want to come up there and help her too. So after James, okay, James, sit down, and no more talking out of turn. Okay, James? Yes, ma'am. So another child starts talking out of place because they want to come up and tell. I said, okay. So James was the example, but no one else is going to come up. If you're misbehaving, you're going to have to go and sit with teacher. And teacher does not want you to sit by her because she's all the way in the back. And she wants you to stay up in the front and listen to the stories. So what happens is, yes, they will do that. They will vie for that attention. And a lot of times I do have to address it as it is. And sometimes I'll say, okay, James is our example of what we're going to not do. So we're going to sit quietly, we're going to listen, and we're not going to misbehave. And so a lot of times that has to be said. And a lot of times I have to send them by their teacher because they do want me to bring them up. And I can't bring up everybody. Remember, these are children. So you got their minds are very tender, and they are concerned with what adults think of them. That's why it's so important to love and respect them, because they can feel that energy. And if you don't, what happens is they start turning on you, and they will give you just what you're giving them. And that's why I think it's a lot of disrespect, because I think the adults are not giving that small child who they think is not as important as them, because they don't know as much and they haven't been on earth long, but they don't feel that they should be at a respect level. A respect level is different from a speaking level or a mental level. And of course, you and I, as the adult James, not the child James, as the adult James, are on the same mental level as far as conversation and occupation, as far as what we do and our love for what we do. But a child doesn't have a job. A child doesn't know how to converse as we do on a regular basis. So we feel that they are less than, and they aren't worthy of our conversation of a full meaningful conversation. And I think that's where we miss out, because children will engage you as far as you will take them. And I'm not going to use supercalifragilistic espialidocious. Okay, that's another word. But I'm not going to use a really long definition word or word that they wouldn't understand. But I'm going to speak where they will hear my concern, and it could be at a higher level than they are. It's okay, because they can sense it. So I think that's where we're missing it. I think if we expect things from children, they will give it to us. If we don't allow them to do certain things, and we don't permit certain conversation or certain behavior, they will oblige. They will not carry it out. They will say, well, I better not do that around Miss Shiela, because, oh my gosh, last time she got a little upset, or she was sad, or she didn't want me in her circle if I'm negative. And I think that's what we have to start doing, putting out what we want the children to give us. If you want the children to respect you, regardless of where you are, start respecting them.
I'm going to try to summarize the approach that I hear you taking with these kids. First thing I heard you say was that, well, you point out the problem first. When you have a child interrupting, you start with, I hear talking, and you say it in a way that only Shiela can say it in that beautiful sing-song way. It's not nasty. It's just, you're just saying what you're seeing. And you also follow up with that by letting them know what the effect is on the room. So you're not saying, I hear talking, and that's against the rules. You're not saying, I hear talking, and so I'm going to do something bad to you. You're saying, I hear talking, and that means your neighbor can't hear the story, which is true. So you're kind of looking at a very truthful but positive way of explaining the problem versus kind of a more negative way of saying it. Next, you're providing options. So you talked about saying to the kid, do you want to stick around for story time, or do you want to go be with your teacher? And you're being truthful. You're saying these are really your options, and you're really asking what they want to do. They're still not necessarily embarrassed, or you haven't put up a fight with them. You're offering something to them. The third thing I really like is you find a way to go with it sometimes. Sometimes you can go with it, and that's the easiest way to stop a problem, is to kind of allow it for a moment. So your example was, okay, the kid wants to talk, let him come up and talk by joining the story. And that might cost you 5 seconds of your time in the story, but it may solve the child's need for wanting to get the room's attention in a way that could be really beneficial for them. I think a lot of times people find their gifts that way, when they're the thing that's weird about them isn't stifled, but it's encouraged and said, okay, you want your chance to do this, come up and do it. And maybe that kid becomes the next great storytime librarian, children's librarian, because they loved doing it when they were 5. Mm-hmm. And then you have one more approach that I heard, which is giving them some love, giving them a hug, and recognizing that maybe there's a little embarrassment in that. Maybe they're a little uncomfortable, and that's okay. Compared to a more forceful or aggressive or whatever type of approach, offering a hug, maybe they take you up on it, and that is what they needed. They hadn't been hugged all day. Maybe they do want to be closer to your energy, but maybe they just stick with, oh yeah, I am kind of out of line, and Now, Miss Sheila's kind of embarrassed me in front of my friends a little bit, and I don't really want to hug her, so I think I'll just sit down and keep my mouth closed. But either way, in all of those steps, you haven't started static. You haven't caused a conflict or anything worthy of fighting over from the kid's perspective. I also like that although you're willing to do these kind of gentle approaches, you also have a limit where that doesn't mean everybody's going to get a chance to talk, come up, get their hug, be in the story. It's kind of, you let the room know that this isn't necessarily the ideal outcome. So you have that balance of being strict on it, but also showing them that your approach is gentle, loving. So in all of those steps, is there a way to summarize it further for the times when I'm not able to run through each of those steps? Is there something simple that I can remember? I like to think of it as something I could write on the back of my hand. Do you have anything like that for us?
Okay, well, you know what? I wish I could give you the magic touch, but you really, basically everything that you do, it has to be what you feel at that moment. And what I would recommend is, as you are working with children, just keep in mind that you want them to enjoy what you are providing, and you want them to do it at the highest level. So the highest level is listening to story time for me. The highest level is listening to story time and enjoying story time. If there is anything that hinders it, then what I would do immediately is halt that so that they will get the full benefit. So whatever your situation is, whatever your max that you want the children to get out of whatever you do, you don't want anything to interfere with that. So what we have to do is find something always to be in place that you can halt it before it gets out of hand. So those are just simple things that I do to just halt those either talkative or misbehaving children, because they're hindering story time, and it calls other people to look at them versus looking at the book. So immediately I'm going to take that situation and make it halt, make it stop, make it not exist anymore. So I want to do anything that would cause the children to still keep the story in mind and keep their mind on the story, but not on that distraction. So I don't know if it's one thing, but I think the goal is to keep in mind what your goal is for I'm using goal, but the objective is to keep in mind that you are trying to do story time so that children can learn and grow. That's my objective. My goal is to stop or halt any hindrances that would cause this from happening. So I'm not concerned about what they're going to do the next time, because you never can predict. But I have to be ready at all times with love and respect to stop it from taking over my objective, which is to do a complete story time where all the children can learn and grow. So I don't know if that's what you wanted, James.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and I have trouble putting it in a sentence also. Yeah. I think that you have, as fun as you are and as loving as you are, you actually have very clear boundaries, meaning because your goal is that ideal scenario, anything that takes away from it is popping up as a flag for you, and then you're saying, okay, how am I going to address this? Rather than let it slide, let it slide, let it slide. And now we're in this place where, oh my God, what's happening? And in my experience, that's when I lose my temper, because I got to a place where, how did we get here? But if you're saying, no, this is going to be perfect. And each interruption is handled, dealt with. You're showing the kids repeatedly, I'm not just going to ignore and let the whole mood shift to being negative or out of control. So, when you've tried all that and it's still not working, do you have any type of one simple trick that you find gets a kid's attention when all else fails?
Okay, so obviously when children misbehave, they need to put their energy somewhere. So what we do is we stop the story time when I see that it's really getting out of hand or there's more than one child or two children. We stop story time and I do an exercise, James. It's quite comfortable and it's relaxing for adults too. So what we do is we raise both arms above our heads and hold it there and go down slowly, halfway, stop, then we ease down beside ourselves, and then we lift it up above our heads all again. Oh, you should try it, James. It's very comforting. Oh, you are. And do it halfway. Okay, now go up again. Let's go back up to above our heads. And then go back down. Okay, before you know it, the children are calmer. And what we do at the end, we just go one more time up and then slowly, I said, don't do it fast. Don't do it too fast. And slowly we bring it down, 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 down. And the children breathe just as I do. And I said, okay, everybody, now I failed to mention that we do stand up for this activity. And then I said, okay, everybody sit down, but sit down with your hands in your lap, and we're very quiet for story time. So that actually calms them down. The teachers are distressed. It takes them to the point where, oh, that does feel good. And we're back again to story time. And usually I can go forward at least one story ahead. And that's why I do a story and a song, James, because children don't sit very well for just too long of a time. And, you know, the internet and tablets and those games aren't helping us in this fact. But because of that, because of their attention span, I usually do a story and a song, a story and a song, a story and a song. And then we close with an activity that they can actually get up and move because they'll remember these things. So, and all of it's related to one theme. So we keep it theme related and they learn from it. So the more ways you hear something, you're more prone to remember it. So.
Oh, yeah. Changing of the physical state. That does work for everyone, doesn't it? Do you have any resources that you would recommend?
I'm so glad you asked. I would love for anyone who work with children to read The 5 Love Languages for Kids by Gary Chapman. Now, he co-wrote that with someone else, but Gary Chapman is the lead author in that book. And, you know, most adults think, you know, they shouldn't be writing books like that for children, but it is totally child friendly. And if you love children, if you love working with children, this book, The 5 Love Languages for Children, will give you an idea of how to work with children and deal with children and see how each child is different. And you can relate to that child that's different with love and patience, but in a totally different way than you deal with this child that maybe does not require as much love and attention. So the 5 love languages of kids or children, I believe it's children. Yes, please do. But it's worth your read.
Oh, well. We'll put a link to that book. It's The 5 Love Languages of Children. All right. Where can we find out more about you and the library?
Well, James, I'm a little busy bee, and So I work at the Colleton County Library, Colleton County Memorial Library, but I'm also a publisher, and I'm also a trainer, and I'm a storyteller. I'm an author. No, but no. You can find it on missliteracy.com, msliteracy.com. And you will find out a lot of different things that I do. Thank you, James, for having me. It was great.
Always wonderful to talk with you, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
So, Sheila, when you were having, what type of honey, where do you get your honey for your toast?
I get my honey from the grocery store.
That's what it's made.
No, I didn't go to Bee City. No, I didn't do that.
Expensive there.
Well, yeah, but I just don't. It's easier to go to the grocery store than to go to Bee City.